All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the two things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much.
Welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. President Trump joking as he basically berated the United Nations yesterday, which I'll get into in a moment, but there is some breaking news from Texas today where multiple people have been shot at an immigration and customs facility in Dallas. Local media there say 2 people have been killed and the shooter, or one of the shooters, is dead as well. This is a developing story. We'll be hearing about it throughout the day. Meanwhile, a big chunk of President Trump's speech at the UN was focused on the domestic and global achievements of his second term while criticizing the inaction of the UN.
I didn't think of it at the time because I was too busy working to save millions of lives. That is the saving and stopping of these wars. But later I realized that the United Nations wasn't there for us. They weren't there. I thought of it really after the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action.
Trump also calling out the countries that have suggested a Palestinian state.
Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities. Instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now.
And we kick it off with commentary and analysis from Rob Finnerty.
Just remember that none of these people ever thought they'd ever have to deal with Donald Trump again. But he is back, and they tried to stop him today, and I don't care what the excuse is after the fact from the United Nations. But the powers that be did not want Donald Trump to deliver this speech today. That's a fact. And when the leader of the free world entered the building, the escalator suddenly stopped working at the exact moment that he stepped on. So the president and the First Lady walked up the broken escalator, which then miraculously started working again. I suppose that's the beautiful thing about escalators. They never actually break. They just become stairs. Minutes after that, Donald Trump began his speech, and somehow this happened.
I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter because the teleprompter is not working. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
Boy, a lot's changed since Trump 1.0 to now. That was all done on purpose to try and upset the president, throw him off his game, maybe get it to the point where he doesn't deliver the speech. But after that, the speech began, and it was America first. With the First Lady present, clearly she was there to support her husband. Marco Rubio was also there, with Steve Witkoff and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent after the S&P 500 set yet another record, a fourth straight day this week, the S&P 500 finishing at an all-time high. And all of this sent a message that America was back, but that America was through with this little international game where we pretend that fake problems are real problems and real problems like death and war and inflation are fake problems. The room was full, but there was something else that was noticeable. This room was silent for an hour as they listened to the President of the United States and really the biggest leader in the world. And Donald Trump made the case for America, something we never saw from Joe Biden because he was never America first.
But today, just 8 months into my administration, we are the hottest country anywhere in the world. Gasoline prices are down. Grocery prices are down. Mortgage rates are down. And inflation has been defeated. The only thing that's up is the stock market, which just hit a record high.
The president doing all that on purpose, addressing how much has changed here in just 8 months. The president pointing out what new leadership can mean for a country in a room filled with people who have driven their respective countries into the ground, all in the name of some crackpot ideas about globalism and climate change and illegal immigration.
For the last 4 months, and that's 4 months in a row, the number of illegal aliens admitted and entering our country has been zero. If you look back just a year ago, it was millions and millions of people pouring in from all over the world, just poured into our country with the ridiculous open border policy of the Biden administration. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody is ever, and nobody's doing anything to change it. And because they choose to be politically correct, they're doing just absolutely nothing about it.
Once again, he was saying this in a room full of people who absolutely hate the man. Donald Trump said about the United Nations what so many of us have felt for so long. In a room full of world leaders, he addressed what America has accomplished without the help of the United Nations.
In a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. In all cases, they were raging with countless thousands of people being killed. This includes Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Congo and Rwanda, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan.
The president did meet separately with French President Emmanuel Macron after France joined other countries in support of a Palestinian state, as I mentioned on yesterday's Daily. He also met with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and encouraged Ukraine to take back its land from Russia, something that you're hearing a lot about today. And this is what President Zelensky said after their meeting.
Trump is a game changer by himself.
If you think about everything that Rob Finnerty just laid out, yes, he is a game changer in many ways. There is at least one Democrat that agrees with a lot of what Trump is doing, at least when it comes to the Middle East. That's Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman, who spoke with our Greta Van Susteren.
Days after President Trump met with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the UK now says it will break with the United States and recognize a Palestinian state. Israel says this will just reward Hamas. Earlier, I spoke with Pennsylvania Democrat Senator John Fetterman. Senator, nice to see you again, sir.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure to be back.
Senator, this is one of these interviews which I have a sneaking suspicion you and I agree on right from the get-go. I know what I think, so, but let me ask you, what do you think about the fact that UK and some other countries are going to recognize Palestinian state?
Well, of course, I strongly disagree with that. But even more than that, I just can't understand why they would do that. You have human beings, what Hamas have kept them, virtually 2 years underground, tortured, starved, and being forced to dig their own graves. And yes, I see the video, the kinds of the spectacles of now when they release them, and they would march out, coffins too of children that they beat to death. I mean, these are key allies like the UK, and what's the message to Hamas? Now, if Hamas responds and they cheer that, like what's wrong with you? If your decisions now Hamas is cheering, why can't you just reevaluate? Like maybe we're on the wrong side here.
Well, it seems to me that they could have waited if they think this is a solution, not while people are being held, to give a win to Hamas, because to me it seems there's no incentive if they think that the world is more and more and more turning in their favor and against Israel. There's just no motive for the Hamas to release those that are being held.
I agree, and more than what it does for Hamas is that gives them like a narrative. Now they can claim, well, this is all of the destruction in Gaza and what they've been through and what those terrible things that we did on 10/7. It's now we can all celebrate because now we've become, our own state as regard to that thing. And that's one of the reasons why I fully support why Netanyahu, they can't ever hand that to them. I support what they continue to do because I don't understand why the world and these countries now are looking to recognize Palestine, saying, why aren't they demanding before we do anything to, release all those hostages? And now just what happens in a war, one side surrenders and they all work together and now, they have a new path. That's what's happened all across our history. And now here whether it's a reward, but it also creates a narrative. And I even hear what Hamas is saying, now, like, this is why this is part of the sacrifice. And now it's all made it all worth okay.
Well, you've got the UK, you've got Portugal, France, Canada, Australia. They're recognizing a Palestinian state, and of course you have the United States, which is not. But they all those nations recognize Hamas as terrorists. And I just can't figure out who does the UK in particular think is going to lead the Palestinian state? It can't be President Mahmoud Abbas. He's 89 years old. He's the Palestinian Authority leader. So have they even thought forward who is going to lead this mythical nation that doesn't exist, that they are now rewarding the terrorists?
Well, I mean, absolutely. It's a failed nation, not even a failed nation. It's clearly failed, and there is no real leadership except for Hamas. And it's clear Hamas refuses to change their views. I mean, their stated objective is to destroy Israel and run all of the Jews into the sea, from the river to the sea. Of course, that's their entire slogan. And now who's going to be left? Well, that's why it's entirely appropriate to force Hamas into submission. And now, of course, the Palestinians suffer for that. Now, people blame Israel for that suffering. I fully blame Hamas and, of course, Iran and the proxies that they've created and have done these terrible things. And that's why, our key allies, what kind of values do your nation live by? And how you are absolutely going to recognize a state under these kinds of circumstances and how it came about. I mean, can you imagine if Macron, if Hamas tortured and murdered 1,200 French citizens and are keeping French citizens underground for 2 years? How much enthusiasm in France there'd be now to, hey, let's recognize their new nation as a response to that thing, and it's astonishing.
Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman on the record with Greta Van Susteren. You may have noticed that Newsmax has added in a daily Israel update with Katrina Zish and Israel correspondent Jodie Cohen.
I'm here in the old city of Jerusalem, where you can literally walk in the footsteps of Jesus.
We went from the Via della Rosa all the way to the Church of the Sepulchre, and it is incredible to think and know that Jesus was buried there.
Since this place is the heart of the world, the Christian world, and the most important place in the world. This is the land of believers.
It's just amazing. I came from the U.S., and it's like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I think it's amazing, and it's like you can feel the holiness.
For me, the spiritual things here, what I'm living here, is that we can steps on the way, the places where Jesus passed through. And for me, that's everything is true.
The whole thing has been incredibly meaningful and incredibly powerful to understand what it is to be a Christian and what it is to follow Jesus.
Jodie Cohen, thank you so much. I'm Katrina Zish, and that is your Israel Update, brought to you by La Palm.
The Israel Update is every day during American Agenda. And let's go back to Finnerty, who spoke with Bill O'Reilly about ABC Disney's Jimmy Kimmel situation ahead of Kimmel's return last night.
All right, joining us now from more, author of the New York Times #1 best-selling book, Confronting Evil, and host of No Spin News, Bill O'Reilly, back with us. Bill, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Rob. We appreciate it. And that's the 20th #1 on the New York Times list, world record. So we're very pleased Confronting Evil so quick out of the gate.
Congratulations. Who's #2 on that list, by the way?
Bob Woodward. He's got 14 #1s. So I don't think my record's ever going to be broken because people don't read as much as they used to now. But it's a good book, and we're happy that people discover it. And we'll get into this with Kimmel, because it's very hard for non-liberal authors or singers or actors or anybody with a product to get on Jimmy Kimmel or any of the network program. Talk about lack of freedom of speech. That's the real story, not Kimmel.
Well, let me just ask you. So you're out with this new book. I've read it. At one point, Bill, you had the biggest show on cable. Let me just ask you, have you been invited to appear on GMA, The Today Show, CNN, MS Now, CBS, or ABC? I doubt it. Shouldn't Brandon Carr look into that?
Sure. I mean, that's the real censorship, that for the past 10 years, ever since Trump's gotten in the political arena, 5 major television outlets refused to book any non-liberal guests. I mean, you got Mark Levin. He's a big bestseller. You got a lot of talent on Newsmax. You got a lot of talent on Fox News that can have an intelligent conversation. You'll never get on them. Now, I've been invited to talk to Major Garrett, a colleague of mine, at Fox on CBS. That was new. Skydance took it over. I think they're trying to change the censorship thing here.
Right.
So I did that. And then there's a program at CNN, late night program, that offered me a slot, 5 minutes or so, but it's not going to do us any good. But I confronted Anderson Cooper himself, because I know him. And I said, hey, what's the problem? You know you're going to get much better ratings if you put me on. It's a good book. So, but, you know, they just won't, because
Any
management...
conversations with Brandon Carr? And I'll just tell you, Bill, Brandon Carr he's been on this show several times. We've reached out to him daily for the last week. He always responds. He hasn't gotten back to us. So he was everywhere when this happened, and then he went quiet.
Yeah, I don't know what that is, but Carr is limited to only the 3 networks. And they have to operate under the federal government's mandate of public interest. So I ask you, Rob, you're a smart guy. Is the public interest being served by ABC, NBC, and CBS when they totally exclude every point of view that's not liberal?
Yeah, and they've been doing this for decades.
Serving the public interest?
No, you know my answer. Not. Communications Act 1934, in exchange for using the public airwaves, public broadcast licenses. To your point, ABC, CBS, NBC have an obligation to serve the public good. We played the soundbite, and I'll let everyone decide at home if they think Jimmy Kimmel is serving the public good. Let me ask you, again, he's not going to be on in 71 markets that he was on in last Monday. How does he approach this tonight? He's got to be careful, because he wants to be back on Sinclair and Nexstar. So how does he approach this tonight at 11:30?
I don't know. I know Kimmel, and I was surprised he made that mistake, and it was a mistake. I was also surprised the producers and writers of his program didn't say, hey, Jim, you know, making a statement that MAGA may be responsible for the assassination of Charlie Kirk, that's about as irresponsible as you get. You're going to get in trouble. I don't know how defiant Jimmy's going to be. I offered, through Adam Carolla, one of his best friends, about a year ago, to talk to Kimmel off the record, because I saw where he was going, into this hate Trump swamp where you can't get out of that. Now, I don't expect him to apologize. I'm not a guy that wants him banished. I don't really care whether he's on ABC or not. I know that Turning Point doesn't want him back. I know that. They've made that clear. But to me, I don't like this banishment stuff. I don't like this cancel culture stuff.
Well,
do
you think, Bill, it's about the first? Let me just play a soundbite. This is Rand Paul. So many on the left say this is about free speech, and then Rand Paul on the right said this is also a free speech issue. Take a look.
I mean, this is television, for goodness sakes. You have to sell sponsorships. You have to sell commercials. And if you're losing money, you can be fired. But the government's got no business in it, and the FCC was wrong to weigh in, and I'll fight any attempt by the government to get involved with speech. I will fight.
Yeah, I don't get that. I think Jimmy's bad for business. When did Donald Trump call Disney ABC? He didn't do that.
Well, look, of course he didn't do it. And again, it's just 3 networks. Rand Paul is wrong because he's missing the real attack on freedom of speech. I guess these guys just live in a world of their own. That, Kimmel was punished by the affiliated stations who were getting thousands of complaints about him. And the affiliated stations, in Idaho and Utah and Mississippi, they got to deal with the public. They got to deal with these people. And they're telling Disney, look, can't you tamp the hate down? It's every single night.
The great Bill O'Reilly of No Spin News and author of the most New York Times #1 bestsellers on Finnerty. I know you didn't watch Jimmy Kimmel's return to the airwaves last night, but he did say this.
You understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man.
It may not have been his intention, but that is exactly what he did. Getting a little choked up there. But then he went on to say, thanks to President Trump trying to get him fired, saying he has no ratings, he now has even more ratings thanks to Trump, so Trump failed bigly and acted as if he were reading a statement from Disney asking people to re-sign up for Disney's streaming service that millions had canceled in the wake of his comments, which actually announced yesterday that it's raising the price of its monthly subscriptions beginning on October 1st. Yesterday, I told you that the closing arguments were taking place in the Ryan Routh trial for the attempted assassination of President Trump at his West Palm Beach golf club last year. It took the jury about 2 hours to find Routh, who defended himself, guilty on all counts. Then chaos broke out in the courtroom as Routh tried to stab himself in the neck with a pen. More from Greg Kelly, who I hate to say obviously didn't listen to the Newsmax Daily yesterday.
All right, so he's guilty. The guy who tried to kill President Trump at that golf course a year ago, found guilty today by a jury. I barely knew Ryan Routh, is his name, was on trial. This just kind of happened and it's gone. Just like the 2 assassination attempts just happened. No, there's more to this. Anyway, guilty on all counts, from weapons altering to attempted assassination. And he will spend most likely the rest of his life in jail. He hasn't been sentenced yet. 59 years old, found guilty on all counts. If you look at the sketch there, he's trying to stab himself in the neck with a pen. That was his reaction.
At this point, Greg goes on to play other clips of Secret Service press briefings, including clips pertaining to the Butler assassination attempt of President Trump. And then he showed some maps, which obviously you cannot see, maps of the West Palm Beach golf course as well as Butler. So I'm fast forwarding to this.
I'm suspicious. I remain suspicious. And quite frankly, some weird stuff happened today that kind of suggests weirdness of this nature. You saw that the escalator situation, the escalator stopped working. I've been caught on like 5 elevators in my life. An escalator has never stopped working mid-escalation. Take a look again. It just stops. And
President Trump, why did you cancel the meeting with Chuck Schumer?
It's not going to stop them, of course. Watch President Trump when he gets to the top. He knows something's up.
You got everything?
That's not right. That is not right. And I think they played games with that. I'll show you. I think I can prove it in a moment. They also played games with his teleprompter, his great big speech at the United Nations, and they turned off the teleprompter.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. and I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you, nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
So, yeah, again, that was yesterday at the United Nations in New York City. And if you haven't seen that clip, as Greg said and as Rob Finnerty said, the escalator mysteriously stopped the second the First Lady and the President got on it. They walked up to the top, and then within seconds, it started again. And then as soon as he was about to begin speaking, the teleprompter went out. By the way, the president commented on the guilty verdict of Ryan Routh.
I'm very appreciative of the justice that was given and the way it was handled by Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche.
According to the White House calendar, the president has no scheduled events today outside of his daily intelligence briefing. Then tonight he is hosting a Rose Garden Club dinner. On Wall Street, stock markets opened in the green. Micron Technologies posting better than expected earnings late yesterday, and Costco is scheduled to report earnings after the closing bell today. That is always a big one as far as consumer sentiment and spending goes. Costco. Bitcoin and most other cryptocurrencies also in the green this morning. Bitcoin trading just above 113,000. XRP is up a few cents at $2.88. And heads up if you're driving a Hyundai Palisade SUV. The company is recalling almost 600,000 vehicles due to a potential seatbelt locking issue. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the recall involves 2020 to 2025 Palisade SUVs. All right, keep up with all of today's developing news and breaking news throughout the day on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. Also, make sure you're streaming on Newsmax Plus so you can get all your favorite shows, hosts, and all of the fantastic expert analysis. Don't forget, the news now starts each and every morning at 6 o'clock Eastern with Alex Kramer, followed by Wake Up America, National Report, Newsline, American Agenda, Greta Van Susteren, Chris Salcedo, Carl Higbee, Rob Schmidt tonight at 7, Finnerty, Greg Kelly, The Right Squad, Ed Henry, Todd Starnes, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. As always, thank you for listening to the Newsmax Daily. I do appreciate that. It is the third and final day of Rosh Hashanah for Jews around the world. If you're celebrating, enjoy that. Pay attention and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.